Tabby.
And I'm Caitlin, and today we will be discussing A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins.
After reliving the Hunger Games trilogy, the last however many weeks we've been doing that, this was a little bit of a letdown for me.
Because, like we said, when we were rereading the trilogy, we were like, wow, these really hold up. Like, these are so good and intriguing, and we can't wait to read the prequel. And the prequel fell flat.
It just was not the same like the writing itself wasn't bad. Like it was well written. It was just I feel like the content of the book was nothing.
It was
Just
it was
nonsense.
giving nothing.
It gave me absolutely nothing. I actually ended up hating the character more
Yeah.
than I already did.
I'm trying to think like if I actually do hate him more or if I just still hate him exactly the same amount.
And it's like,
that
it makes sense why you're like this, and like at no point were you ever good.
Yeah. No, he wasn't. He just has always been a little piece of shit.
Yeah,
So
you're just a true villain.
I'm gonna go ahead before we give our ratings. I'm gonna read the back of the book from Goodreads. It is the morning of the reaping that will kick off the 10th annual Hunger Games. In the capital, 18-year-old Coriolaunus Snow is preparing for his one shot at glory as a mentor in the games. The once mighty House of Snow has fallen on hard times, its fate hanging on the slender chance that Coriolanus will be able to outcharm, outwit, and outmaneuver his fellow students to mentor the winning tribute. The odds are against him. Poor baby. He's been giving the humiliating assignment of mentoring the female tribute from District 12, the lowest of the low. Their fates are now completely intertwined. Every choice Coriolanus makes could lead to favor or failure, triumph or ruin. Inside the arena, it will be a fight to the death. Outside the arena, Coriolanus starts to feel for his doomed tribute and must weigh his need to follow the rules against his desire to survive no matter what it takes.
Basically, he is the most stuck up, entitled character I've ever had the misfortune of reading about. So me personally, I gave this book a 7.3 out of 10. Because like I said, it wasn't a bad book. I did learn a lot of things, and there was a lot of really cool foreshadowing to the series, which was fun to like go back and look at. I just felt like this could have been like a short story. It could have been like a novella, and like she could have done novellas on a bunch of different characters instead of one pretty decently long book about the life and hardships of Snow.
Yeah, no, I agree. That would have been maybe a better use of her time. I rated it a 7 out of 10 because, again, just kind of fell flat for me. Like, I was just questioning the whole time I was reading it what the point of this novel was, because, like, I already knew before I read this book how much I hated the Capitol and how much I hated Snow. So I was just like, what is this adding for me? I did appreciate like the cool like foreshadowing type things that you already talked about, but other than that I was kind of like, okay, nothing's changed for me, and
like, yep, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
moving on.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the characters. We're going to talk a lot about Snow because his is the only point of view in this book, which I thought was very interesting. Just I know it's all about like his past and like how he got to where he is. I just really would have liked to see some stuff from other people's perspective in that time.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
But I mean, it was also interesting to look at it from the perspective of a Capitol child who was there during the war and like how it shaped him. It was a very poetic book though, because like there were a lot of really neat parallels from Snow to like as a young adult to the trilogy that we just did. And like it was fun to look back on it. So like having him like poison, or having Lucy like poison people to get through the Hunger Games, and then him later on using that exact same poison to kill his enemies and like anybody standing in his way to like rising up in power. I thought that was awesome.
That was. And that just goes to show that like even though we didn't necessarily enjoy this book as much as the others. It's still extremely well written.
Yeah.
It really reemphasizes what we said about Snow. Like, he is just a very well written villain.
As an
But
adult.
as an adult, yeah, what pisses me off about this version of him, like this young version of him, is he just comes off as whiny. I understand that he has been through it, okay, because he lived through the Great War or whatever, and he suffered for it, as everyone, all of the civilians did, and I understand that would suck really bad. However, he needs a fucking attitude adjustment
And a reality check.
Yes. So let's talk about some things that he did that pissed us off. So he is so caught up about whether or not he looks poor, even though he literally is poor. Like, for what? For what? Because he lives in this like fucking capital, and he's like, I need to keep this little bullshit position that I have, so that I can just like keep contributing to this horrible society that fucked me over. Like,
but I think if he hadn't done that, though, they really would have been like, you don't have a place here because you don't have any power. And it's like, I think his name probably could only get him so far. And he did see that later on in the book, that his name only got him so far. Why does he feel like he has more right than anybody else to be successful? Like, is I guess what I was confused about, because it's like he was just such a cruel child. Like,
yes, and he acted like his family name or whatever was so prestigious or whatever, and it's like, clearly it's not. If you're like,
right,
if you
gotta fight for it,
have a stained dress shirt and shit, like, it's just, he thinks he's so much better than everyone, even though he literally is considered like the scum between the capital's toes. And so that just really pisses me off, because he also, like, he's complaining about the food that he has. Like, they have cabbage to make stew, and he's like, oh, boo-hoo, like, I only have this food instead of like starving to death. Like, that's the alternative.
And I think what was so fucked up about that was he was like, just think of how much taller I could be if I didn't have to eat cabbage every day. And it's like, there are people literally fucking like dying in the streets.
Yeah.
Like, it's probably okay if you're not 6'4". Like, you're gonna be all right.
Like, so out of touch. And again, he's a true villain. Like, he's just a piece of shit. And what's frustrating, I think, from a reader's perspective, is you want there to be some sort of redeeming quality.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to empathize with him in some way, or at least empathize with the version of him that used to exist. And he just sucks. So
there's
bad.
nothing to like feel sorry. Like, am I sorry that your parents are dead? Yes, that's terrible that happened to you. Sounds like your parents weren't the best people, but I mean, they were still your parents. But it's like, you do still have a place to live. You do still have food to eat. You are still getting the best education possible.
And you're not being thrown into the reaping with the other children from the districts.
And just like his treatment of his peers too is just like flabbergasting to me. He's like, I have to smile and be kind to them because I know they're just little idiots and like they don't know any better. And then like poor, how did you pronounce it? Sejanus?
I think I thought it was Sejanus, like when I was reading it. Okay. Yeah.
Like, is nothing but kind to him. And he was just like, look at him trying to help me. Like, he thinks I'm like lower than him. Like, what?
But then on the flip side, okay, so at one point he is like emotionally invested at this point in like Lucy Gray, and he's like apologizing to her for the Hunger Games. He's like, I'm so sorry you're in this situation. Like, I should at least try to quit, like Sejanus. Like, he's kind of saying like Sejanus is better than him in that moment. But then it turns out that that's just all a crock of shit. Like, he doesn't mean any of it, because immediately
he's like, I'm never gonna quit.
Yeah. And he was given the opportunity to help Sejanus and the rebels and like run away himself. And he literally was like,
did him so dirty.
So that's what just pisses me off, is like, these people are not doing anything bad to him. In fact, these people are trusting him, and they're like, we see you, you're a good person, Coriolanus. And he takes that and he just like punches them in the throat for no
He's
reason.
like, well, would a good person do this? No, and like just his mindset towards like the district people too. So it's like eventually he does realize that he loves Lucy, but his sense of love is so misplaced because it's more like an ownership type thing. It's not necessarily like I want to be with this person. He's like, I want to have full control over every aspect of your life. And like the second that like someone else appears in her life, he's like, why is this other person like talking to you? And like literally kills someone over it.
The freaking thing that pissed me off the most is exactly related to that, because Lucy Gray is like, she's interview night, she's trying to really impress the Capitol so she gets sponsors. Again, much like Katniss, she is just trying to survive. And so she sings her sad little song about leaving a lover behind back home at District 12. And Coriolanus gets jealous because he's like, no, I'm pretty sure everyone says that you belong to me because I'm your mentor. And so I actually own you and you are my girl and you cannot sing about having a lover back home. And so he's like so fucking focused on whether or not she has a crush on him, because he's like, this is like, I own you and I need to know that you also have a crush on me. And it's like, again, we're looking at a teenage girl who has been thrown into a survival situation.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened to Katniss.
Well, so I'm just not realizing too, like that is 100% why Snow made Katniss like have the whole love triangle thing, because he felt like he is just this scorned lover, and like he was forced to like put on a show basically for the Capitol, and it was also unfair, blah blah blah. And he's like, so I'm gonna make this young girl do it too, just to humiliate her, like I was humiliated.
Yeah, and it goes back to like, how much do you think Katniss just reminded him of Lucy Gray? Like, she's from District 12, from the seam. We're going to talk later about how it's possible that Katniss is even like descended from the Covey or Covey, however we say it. And I think that he just, in her, all he can see is his blinding rage that is directed at Lucy Gray.
Well, and I bet that's why no other person from District 12 like ever won again before Katniss. Like I'm sure he had something to do with that.
Yeah, he's just like specifically like
gave them every disadvantage.
Yeah. He sees a girl tribute from District 12 and he makes it his life's mission to like strangle them.
Sick. He's sick in the head.
He really is. Again, I'm not surprised, I guess. I'm just disappointed because I just wanted something we could latch onto and be like, and feel like conflicted over his character, but nope.
Well, and it's like him poisoning himself to make it look like he was a victim too makes so much more sense now, because this man is fucking neurotic. He was like, oh, what do I need to do to make this situation look really, really good for me, even though I'm the one that caused it? I have to poison myself. Or it's like, okay, what do I need to do to make sure Sejanus's death is not pinned on me? Okay, I'm going to go back and attempt to hide and run. And then once it benefits me, I'll do something else. And so like, he is freaking crazy. And he even says at the beginning that like, he has like these compulsive thoughts and he feels like it's a big weakness. So he tries to like ignore them, but he can't. And so you slowly start to see like his like stability kind of crumble throughout the book, because mostly from Dr. Gall, who is like trying to show him like, no, we're all just like crazy beasts, like just let it out, just let it happen. And then by the time we get to the end where he's running away with Lucy and he's like, Lucy realizes that I killed Sejanus. Like, she's going to be out to get me. Like, she's been out for too long, which she did. Good for her. But he's like, I got to kill her.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's like 2 seconds before he's like, I'm so excited to be running away with this woman that I love so much.
Yeah, the love of my life. Yeah. And it's funny because like he walks out and he takes the gun with him. But then in his mind, he's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be carrying the gun out here. Like, maybe this appears aggressive. Like, You grabbed that for a reason.
Like, you were trying to be quit. You don't need to reason with your inner self. Like, you know why you did it.
Yeah. Who are you lying to, bestie?
You're the only one out here.
Oh my God. So yeah, like all in all, piece of shit. Hate
He's
him.
crazy.
He's been awful from the get-go, turns out. Then we have Lucy Gray.
I was hesitant about her at first.
So yeah, she kind of rubs me the wrong way a lot of times.
Girl, you're also pretty fucking crazy.
She is, but like at least she's not a horrible person. You're making a face. Okay.
No, she's not a horrible
she's not
person.
Horrible.
I also felt like she was a little bit of a coward in the games, though. Like,
well, yeah.
she didn't actually fight anybody.
No, she's certainly, she acted cowardly in multiple instances, but I can't fault her for that.
No, I would have done the same thing.
She is a child in the Hunger Games, so I get it. I'm a little like confused about the Covey people. They kind of seem to be like nomadic and they just like sing for money. I don't know. Is that like the vibe you're getting? Is like the kind of like just traveling performers, and then they got like stuck in District 12?
Yeah, no, like because I don't know how long they've been in District 12. But she didn't actually say. She said they like passed through District 12 once, and they're like, now you can't leave. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming probably like towards the end of the war is when they got trapped there, and they're like, yeah, everyone, like, you cannot leave here again. Mm-hmm. So best of luck to you.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
Yeah. But like 10 years is kind of a long time for them to still be there, and like she was pretty young when that happened, I guess.
Yeah.
And so for her to still like call herself like a Covey, I don't know, because she grew up in District 12.
But they very much like they do have their own like little sect and home in the district. So in the same, actually.
Mm-hmm. Where have we heard that before? Yeah, I just they didn't really explain it very well. So
it was a little confusing to me.
I'm not really sure.
But maybe it was just because like it was obviously a foreign concept to everyone. Like,
especially Snow.
Yeah, he was like, oh, I'm not familiar with this. And yeah, like they really kind of like just took him in. Mm-hmm. They're very trusting.
If they're like a nomadic like people, I'm sure like that's how they kind of grow their family anyway. It's just like,
that's true,
taking on like more people.
Yeah, because they were like, yeah, like of course we trust this person. If Lucy Gray trusts him, like we can trust him.
Like we don't even have to change his name.
Yeah, they're like, it already kind of sounds like a Covey person. I do think that like Lucy Gray is very smart and is going to somehow be related to what happens in the Hunger Games trilogy. It's pretty open-ended. We don't know like what role she plays, but there are some theories. And so I was like, oh, we'll talk about these in our discussion questions.
I feel like if she didn't play a role in anything, they would have just said she's dead. Mm-hmm. Because Snow does not seem like the type of man who lets loose ends go. Mm-hmm. And so with how paranoid he is, like you would think he would try to like go back and find her and like make sure that she never says anything about what happened that night. So
yeah, he kind of was just like, oh, okay, guess I
that worked itself out.
Need to go home now. Or go to the hospital because I got bit by a snake.
He's like, hope that's not poisonous.
Yeah. But then we'll talk about Sejanus. He is too pure for this world.
He was our PETA.
Like, he just wanted to do the right thing. But everyone was like, no, you can't. Like, you can't do that. His parents are shitty. The capital is shitty.
He doesn't really have any friends, truly.
Snow
said he was his friend.
Yeah. Which Sejanus just kind of like naively was like, I'm going to trust you. We're friends now. Like, I mean, he kind of.
Well, even Snow
is happen.
Like, Snow was like, you're like a brother to me. And I was like, since when?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, we know that you're lying.
I wish that Janus had been able to get out. I wish he had been able to escape. I hate that Coriolanus was so like suspicious of him the whole time, because it's
Yeah.
really, at the end of the day, it's really not any of his business. And like, I know he didn't want to be attached to it, but if he hadn't been so fucking nosy, he wouldn't have known anything about it, and
That's
Sejanus could have
true.
done his own thing.
Yeah, like, and I think obviously it all comes back to Coriolanus just thinks like the most important thing is control. And
Mm-hmm.
so like controlling whatever situation, like whenever he gets information about something, like he's like, okay, how can I control this situation just to
Right.
make sure that it doesn't come back and bite me in the ass. And so he's so obsessed with controlling everything and making sure that he is unscathed, that he does not have any sort of care for what happens to anyone else. And that's what happened with Sejanus. And when Lucy Gray realized that, she was like, I gotta bounce because I could be next.
Rest in peace, King. Oh, and you know what was even more fucked up is that like Sejanus died and Coriolanus is bringing like his stuff back to his parents. He's like, man, I really hope his mom still makes me cookies.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, I think we really need to reorganize our priorities.
So let's talk about Sejanus's parents too. Speaking of that, that's Strabo Plinth and Ma Plinth. Obviously, Strabo's a real piece of shit.
Terrible.
And that doesn't surprise me. Like he works for the Capitol, but like it feels like Ma enables him.
Yeah.
And so I don't like this whole like thing of like
She's
her
like,
being
I'll
like
take care of you. And
motherly, and yeah, like it's just gross. It feels like a slap in the face to her son's honor. And then like when his Sejanus is dead, his parents are like, well, Coriolanus, I guess you're our son now because we
yeah.
have to replace him. Clearly, we have to replace our son. So
And I mean,
you're it.
that makes sense how he rose up in power so fast. He had a
Yeah.
freaking billionaire backing him, but
So I was just like, why do we need to replace your son?
I know they're like, you know what? We're gonna buy your tower and we're just gonna live right underneath you guys. So if you need anything, you just let us know.
It pissed me off so bad. Like, fuck
I'm like,
you.
yeah, just forget completely about your son. Um,
They're like, we gotta go ahead and erase that little stain.
and who else in this book? I don't feel like was fully thought out.
Who?
Is Casca Highbottom.
Oh.
Um, I liked the idea of his character,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think he necessarily like fit into the story. It kind of just felt like some like an added layer.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, yes, he told Snow to join the peacekeepers, but I really feel like that was kind of like the extent of the influence he had on his character. Like I don't know. I just
Yeah,
don't feel
the
like
only
he
other like purpose he served for like moving the plot forward was when he explained to Snow that like, oh, your dad is responsible for the Hunger Games because like he kind of like goaded me into coming up with it and then stole my proposal and turned it in behind my back. So it was kind of like that was the other plot point, but we could have written that in
yeah.
any way. So yeah, I agree. Like his character felt kind of
And then he was like,
unimportant.
well, now you've served your purpose and I won't let you slander our family name. So why don't you take your little morphine droplets and be on your way? Then they
And it's
killed him
like,
off.
okay, so do you not actually hold any power? Or
Yeah, it's like, what do you do?
yeah, like if you're gonna let someone just kind of boss you around
Because
like that.
you let Dr. Gall just kind of run the show, even though you're the dean of this
Yeah.
school, but like you're
Which
not really doing your deanly duties
I
here.
would let Dr. Gall do whatever because I'd be scared of her.
She is a scary lady. Let's talk about her.
Yes, let's. I
She is
kind
frightening.
of like talking, speaking of true villains, and what something about Dr. Gall, though, that like is set apart from Coriolanus is like I kind of have like a bit more respect for Dr. Gall. The
Yeah.
reason being, like, she has a code that she lives by and she sticks to it. It might not be right, But Coriolanus Snow is a little weaselly piece of shit.
He's flip-flopping sides and that he'll do whatever he needs. And Dr. Gall's like, well, I'm gonna do whatever I need to, but I'm gonna make
But
damn
you're gonna
sure it's what I
know,
think is right.
yeah, she's like, you're gonna know exactly where you stand. I can tell you that much.
Right.
Like, Dr. Gall obviously is a horrible woman. I am not saying that she is respectable because she's good in any way. I just think, like, if you're going to be a villain, you need to commit.
She was making shit happen. I'll give her that. Like,
Yeah. And I
she's
think
like, I
eventually,
have.
like, Snow does too, like
Yeah.
when he rises to power. But
Well, that's because he had her as a mentor. It's like,
yeah.
what else was he going to be besides Gray under her mentorship? Like, I don't think she would have allowed any other option.
Yeah, that's fair. She's like, hey, you're gonna have to be a little more ruthless, kid.
She wanted the Hunger Games to, truly be this spectacle. And we see that it has become that with her partnership with Snow. He made sure her dreams became a reality.
Yeah. Aw, how sweet.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
Her talking in riddles like freaks me the fuck out.
Like the first one I read, I was like, oh no, she's crazy. And then like she gets up in front of everybody and she's like straight faced, like giving them nothing but facts. And even Snow is like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, no, tell them that you're crazy. You know you're crazy.
She genuinely, yeah, is a very scary villain.
And her little monsters that she's creating, like, now we know where the mutations come from.
Yeah, I'll like our thoughts and concerns discussion.
We'll talk about it.
I want to talk about like the scariest part of the book.
Yeah.
But we also have Tigress, who is Coriolanus's cousin. She also has been through all of these shitty things.
Yeah.
He's been through.
And is still a good person.
Yeah, like she still has like a set of morals that she's like, we can't let these people get us down. Like snow falls on top. Like we got it. Like pick yourself up by your bootstraps, cuz. And then Coriolanus has to do all this shit. She's probably like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, who have you become?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that goes to show because we see how she ends up in the trilogy. Tigress, I guess, becomes a rebel and is the one that helps Katniss. And so that means at some point she must have separated herself from Snow, which I actually read a little bit of, like, there's like a theory that she started doing her body enhancements to look like a cat lady, and Snow didn't want that associated with their family name. And so he had gotten her this position as one of the makeup artists for the Hunger Games, which I'm sure was like a huge point of contention for them too, because she seemed very, very against it. But then for him to, completely shun her because it no longer fit his image just goes to show like how little he actually cares for his family.
He's a fickle bitch, okay? Like he just doesn't know how to care for anybody or love anybody.
Well, and he even says that he's marrying this one girl. He's like, because I know I'm never going to love her. And like, how great is that?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, pretty great. And then Grandmam, what a problematic lady.
A problematic queen, but a Grandmam is a good example of like
you
that.
Kooky bitch.
Like, oh, she's so old, there's no time to change her mind. So we can just kind of overlook all the horrible xenophobic stuff she says and it's like, fine. That's who Grandmam is.
We'll take care of you. It's like that racist grandma that everyone has. And they're just like, okay, grandma. And you can't like, say that.
Grandma, that's inappropriate. And yeah.
Every time, though, she would talk in the book, I could not help but hear it in like a Moira Rose accent.
Oh my God, amazing. And that did not pop into my mind, but I love that.
And it was so funny for me to read it. But I was like, no, I don't want to
What about the parts where she's like singing?
Yes, I read it in Moira Rose's voice.
I love that. That's so funny. Now I want to go back and like read some of her lines and that accent.
Hilarious. And then last but not least, Snow's parents. Dicks, the lot of them.
Yeah, like, and we don't know anything really about his mom, but okay, first of all, his dad for sure was a real dick because he is the one that stole Highbottom's Hunger Games like proposal and like turned it in against his back or behind his back. But his mother, like, Snow only has like fond memories of her, and I'm like, I don't buy it.
I feel like
I'm
it's kind of the
sorry.
same thing with Sejanus's mom, like just probably very enabling, was just like, this is the way things are.
Yeah, this is the way things are, and that's my man, and I'm gonna stand beside him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't trust it. I'm sure she also was not great.
Rest in peace, I guess, but
Yeah, not to
trash.
speak ill of the dead, but you're trash.
But you're trash. I feel like if he had been raised in a loving home, things probably could have turned out a little different. Um, perhaps. Let's talk about some thoughts and concerns because I have some. I have some thoughts and also concerns. So
Same.
I just want to talk about the foreshadowing throughout the book because, like I said, that was my favorite part of this book was those little Easter eggs that she threw in, and you're like, oh my God, I know that. Snow being gifted at DNA manipulation. One of the quotes I have down here is, although it was not his favorite subject, the smell of formaldehyde triggered his gag reflex, and he loved working with a partner. He did sufficiently well in genetic manipulation to have landed a spot in the class. And so that plays a huge role in the future Hunger Games, where they start to genetically manipulate like the tracker jackers, the mutations with like the eyes of the dead victor or the dead tributes, and then like with his future work with like the Mockingjay, stuff like that, which I think was really funny. Like how he's just always hated the Mockingjays and then it comes back. So that was some foreshadowing. Him kind of kickstarting that process to really monetize the games with like the betting and sending like the tributes food and like just making them all around more likable. That is a huge part of the future Hunger Games where they want to like feed them and like dress them up and like really like have that emotional connection with the Capitol so that people are really, really invested in the games, which is super fucked up. But before that, like nobody was interested in it. Nobody wanted to relive the war. They wanted to forget and move past it. And Dr. Gall was like, hell no, we ain't
Dr.
never
Gall was
forgetting
like,
this.
This is my love project.
Yeah, like get out of
my
here.
life's work.
And even Snow, like when he felt like he had been wronged by Lucy Gray, he was like, yeah, fuck these guys. We got to keep this shit going. I'm going to make it better. Oh, and then Grandmam, she says, this is just the type of story that catches fire. I was like, slay. Okay.
I loved that.
Lucy coming up with the Hanging Tree song, which was, I mean, a huge part of the Mockingjay book, with Katniss singing that on live television. I'm sure that just really ground Snow's gears because initially she had created that song for Arlo, who was the person hung at the hanging tree, and made kind of a spectacle. And then eventually, when Lucy sings it, Snow realizes that she's also talking about him a little bit when she asks 3 is like the maximum number of people she'd ever want to kill. He was like, haha, yeah, me too. And she's like, who else did you kill? And he was like, nobody, myself. And then she's like, oh shit. And so she starts singing the Hanging Tree so that the Mockingjays will continue to repeat it over and over and over to him to know that she knows who he is.
Yeah. I loved that part.
You smart girly. But yeah, those were some cool foreshadowing pieces.
Yeah, and then the last thing that actually you wrote here, but that Lucy Gray was going to search for Katniss.
Oh, I did have that
at that point. So that was like really funny too, because it's like it's kind of foreshadowing like here's this whole like unraveling that's about to come his way. It's going to take a long time, but yeah.
Well, and just the fact that he loses Lucy Gray completely when she's looking for Katniss, and then Katniss is born, however many years later, and he was like, you're gonna be a problem. And you're from District 12. And that would make sense why, if we're going to talk about who we think her grandma is, if like that's why they named her Katniss, because it's kind of a slap in the face.
Honestly. Yeah, so a couple concerns to follow our thoughts is, for one, I couldn't get over how silly the Covey name sounded. I kind of felt like it was annoyingly silly. And I guess that's fine, but it was distracting to me a little bit.
like, you gotta pick a song and then pick your favorite color. That's your name now.
Yep. I mean, it felt like you were playing some kind of game with like third graders on the playground, but
yeah.
The scariest part of the book for me. So this is after Dr. Gall basically like tricks Clemencia into reaching into the mutated snake's pit, and she gets bit and like is immediately dying. And so Coriolanus is upset because that was just like not a pleasant thing to witness. And also he was like, oh shit, like, because he knew she was lying, but he didn't realize like she was gonna die for it.
Yeah.
So he's just kind of like, he's panicked. He's stumbling through the game maker's labs to like get to her or like get out and go to the hospital. And he comes upon this lab that has a bunch of avoxes in cages, and they just have like animal body parts sewn onto their bodies, and they're all like screaming, but they don't have tongues. And so it's like a horrible sound. And then like the scientist that's in there is like, you're upsetting the birds. And I was like, I am so
like, get me that book out of here.
Like, that is the scariest fucking thing I've ever read. That's scarier than any horror novel I've ever read.
Yeah,
like,
that was
chapter
really upsetting.
It was haunting.
Well, and just like too, like with Clemencia, like she starts growing fucking like snake scales.
Yeah.
And like, she has the flu. You'll need to come back. And she's like over there fighting for her fucking life and like going crazy. And she's got like these weird twitches now. And they're like, oh, bummer. Side effect of that flu.
Bad case of the flu. Yeah.
I hate that for you, girly. I had 2 more things written down that I forgot to put on this document. So I think it is so funny, and what a huge slap in the face for Coriolanus that 65 years later they use District 13 as the rebel base camp, because the reason why they have fallen upon destitution is because they only invested in District 13. That is solely where their family investments were. And so whenever they bombed it, they lost everything. So that was some sweet foreshadowing. And then the other thing that I thought was really fucked up is that they do the reaping on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
And I caught that and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
That's messed up.
That was kind of funny. And I feel like that was Suzanne Collins' way of saying, like, yeah, this is about dystopian America. Like, you guys you're correct in your assumption that this is a political statement.
Is this play about us?
Is this fucking play about us? So let's talk about the symbolism, because Suzanne loves her symbolism.
And we love her.
So snakes. All right. First of all, the title, A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So snakes symbolize betrayal and death in this book. So a few places where this is represented is at the very beginning in the reaping. Lucy Gray puts a snake on Mayfair. And that's actually what gets Coriolanus's attention. He's like, that was kind of hot. And that's not what he thought, but he did pay attention.
He's like, maybe we're not screwed.
So Lucy Gray had found out that Billy Tope was cheating on her with Mayfair, the mayor's daughter. And so she was betrayed and put the snake on Mayfair as like sort of an omen of sorts. It's like, I know. But also, it is heavily implied that Lucy Gray was chosen in a rigged fashion. That because Mayfair is the mayor's daughter, that she somehow made it to where Lucy Gray got reaped, so that she was just out of the way, which is horrifying. And it kind of makes me glad that Mayfair is dead a little bit. Also, the mutated snakes that Dr. Gall used to suss out Clemencia's lie, those were heavily representing death in that sense, and also symbolizing that aspect of snakes that's like really sneaky and like wise and just kind of knows how to attack the enemy. Also, at the end, Lucy plants a snake to attack Coriolanus. Once she realizes she can't trust him, she leaves her scarf behind in a bush as like a little beacon. And when he goes to touch the scarf, she has planted a snake there to attack him. And I really loved that part because she was clearly betrayed by him and then betrays him right back using a literal snake.
And I like that he's just like, oh my God, do you think it's poisonous? And
I know.
Like, yeah, I think you got some other stuff to deal with right now.
He starts throwing up on the ground immediately because he's having a panic attack. It's embarrassing. Really. He's a weak man.
Truly.
But then President Snow becomes a snake personified in his rise to power, later in the trilogy, and he betrays and poisons his way to the top. And then the songbirds, or mockingjays, are another huge symbol. So Lucy Gray and the Covey, they are all songbirds, and so are the mockingjays. And so that kind of causes the Covey to feel a sense of camaraderie with the mockingjays. They sing with them in the woods. And Lucy Gray says it's not over until the mockingjay sings, which very heavily foreshadows Katniss Everdeen becoming the mockingjay and ending President Snow's rule. And another thing about Snow is that he immediately felt uneasy when he saw mockingjays. And his first instinct was, we have to kill these. Because for him, control is such a fundamental element to having power. And he really felt that the mockingjays are symbolizing a weakness of the Capitol because they failed this experiment and lost control of it. And he ends up being right, of course, because the mockingjay is what takes the Capitol down. So he doesn't realize that he's right, but he definitely will, and it'll feel real bad. And then Snow White symbolizes purity and innocence. And the song that Lucy Gray is named after actually details the death of Lucy, who gets lost in the snow and freezes to death, which would have foreshadowed her own fate had she continued to blindly trust Coriolanus. And then lastly are the roses, which we see in the trilogy as well. But as a child, for Coriolanus, the roses symbolize wealth and status, basically, because it's the one thing that Grandmam has still that is luxurious, and she'll let him wear a rose for a special occasion. But then, later on, when he becomes President Snow, he's always wearing a rose, because at that point he's risen to power, and it's a symbol of wealth and status to him. So he's always wearing one.
Well, and so you know how he always kept his mother's compact with him and stuff. They say later that he genetically modified the roses to have that certain smell. Yeah. And so I bet it's the same scent as his mother's powder.
Yes. And every time he smelled it, he would think fondly of his mother, who I'm sure was so innocent and never did anything wrong.
That's right.
So yeah, that's the symbols in this book. And we have a couple discussion questions. So this theory I actually saw, I did not come up with myself, but there are some people who think Lucy Gray is actually Alma Coin, or that Alma Coin is maybe the daughter of Lucy Gray.
Ooh.
So what are your thoughts on that one?
I mean, it never really specifies how old Alma Coin is, in the Hunger Games trilogy. So I think it's all dependent on age, but I do love that theory because it's where did she come from?
Yeah.
You know?
And why is she so, obviously we know why she hates snow, but why is she so willing to, because we were talking about how with President Coin, she wanted to just throw things the complete opposite direction.
Yeah, she wanted that full control. And
it really just kind of felt personal because, you're not doing what's best for the people as a whole at that point. And we had a huge discussion about that, about how really she just wanted to be the one in power and control. Right. So if she was Lucy Gray, that would make some more sense to me, because it's kind of I just specifically am invested in ruining President Snow's power.
Which, I mean, she definitely had the skills and know-how to do that because she's very smart. But I could also see, if it were her daughter and, Lucy had told her, about, her past because they erased that year of the Hunger Games.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody remembers her being a tribute. And so if Lucy had told her daughter about like what truly happened, and that kind of kick-started like her passion for taking down the Capitol, running it herself, just to have that retribution for her family, that would make sense too.
Mm-hmm. Because she also would be like heavily invested in anything anti-Snow.
Because like Snow's old as fuck by the time we get to the Hunger Games trilogy. I mean, he was 18. It was the 10th Hunger Games. So like 65 years had passed since 18. Then.
So he's 83.
Yeah, so he's an old man at this point. And I think like Alma Coin was younger. And so I think
so maybe the daughter theory,
the idea of her being
some
the daughter. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like it.
That's an interesting one.
I do like that. Here's another theory. Thoughts on this? Katniss is descended from the Covey on her dad's side. So her dad was from the Seam and knew all the places in the woods that the Covey did, as well as having a really good singing voice and already knowing all their songs. So unless like because the Covey got shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And so unless people were there, they probably didn't remember the songs that they sang in the hub unless they were family members of the Covey.
Yeah. This one, I will say, like, this, I saw people think specifically Maud Ivory as Katniss's grandmother. And when I was reading it, at first I thought maybe Katniss was descended from Lucy Gray when these things were kind of showing up. But then, of course, Lucy Gray at the end disappears. So that kind of like, takes that with it. But yes, I was thinking that there's a good chance that her dad was descended from the Covey, and for all of those reasons. And so I think like also what would matter for the future is like that's a big part of why Snow was so quick to see Katniss Everdeen. Like, first of all, the name Katniss, like you're saying, is probably a slight.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when she's singing, because when she sings to Rue, she sings the lullaby that Lucy Gray sings to Coriolanus when they're in the meadow.
Yep.
And so he's probably like, holy fucking shit. Like,
it's her.
It's my mortal enemy, a 16-year-old girl. And so that's where things like really spiral. Like, there was no hope for Katniss. She didn't know any of these connections existed. And she didn't know she was doing anything rebellious when she was doing these things. And so she just got so sucked into something that wasn't her own fight.
Right.
And here's why. Because Snow was so emotionally invested in these events that happened 65 years ago. And now he's like, it's my chance to ruin her and crush her.
At the beginning of the book, too, there's this quote, and it says that Snow had a tendency toward obsession that was hardwired into his brain. It would likely be his undoing if he couldn't learn to outsmart it.
Yup.
Yup. Well, also, this was actually in the trailer for the movie, but I'm pretty sure it happened in the book, too. When Lucy Gray gets done performing her song that, like, kind of captured everyone's attention, she, like, bowed to the audience, and like it caused like a huge uproar. And then Katniss later on, when they made them like perform in front of like the panel of judges, like on their different skill sets and stuff, after she shot the apple, she bowed just like that.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, with a big like dramatic flourish. Yeah, like all sarcastic like.
Yep.
No, genuinely, I think he was so like immediately recognized how like she must be related to the Covey, and so like she was never going to escape his attention. But then whenever things actually started popping off and people were rebelling in her name, he was like, "Oh, wonderful! So I have an excuse to ruin this child," and that he did,
and he sure did. For life, she's ruined for life.
Yeah, he did. He successfully ruined her life.
Well, and like it also is funny too because like Coriolanus at the end of the book was like made a promise to himself to never lie to Lucy again, and then ends up like going to kill her. And like that is one thing that he told Katniss too, was that there would never be any lies between them.
Yeah, actually. Oh my God.
So he
Wow.
made good on that.
Yeah. Damn.
I'll give him that. He didn't lie to her.
Yeah, so that's the thing is like there are some things that he's not willing to compromise, it seems, like as far like regarding his character, but they're
But he
so
can certainly look
minuscule.
past some things.
They're so minuscule that it's like, yeah, you're still a real piece of trash. Long story short, the book was decent, and it was kind of fun to analyze and look at the foreshadowing things, but
yeah,
that was kind of the extent of my excitement to discuss this book. Unfortunately,
same.
it just kind of didn't hit the way that the trilogy hit.
Just didn't slap, you know.
Yeah, it didn't fuck. It just kind of like banged a little bit. I'm sorry. Anyway, join us in our discussion of the movie adaptation of this book, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. We're going to kind of dive into some of the casting and like other things about the movie.
And then to kick off spooky season, so we're actually going to do a couple mini-sodes back to back, and then we're going to have like a really nice little series to end October. But we are going to kick off the season by discussing spooky book talk recommendations that we keep seeing it. We're really excited to read.
Yeah. So a couple weeks of minisodes, but then the books that we're doing in October are The X-Hex and The Kiss Curse by Rachel Hawkins, and they look extremely cute and like fluffy, kind of, like
we just need something
inspired.
Like that.
Yeah, we need something lighthearted after all of this like murder and sadness that we just read about. So
and like child imprisonment.
Yeah, so I'm sure you guys feel the same way. So go ahead and get prepared for those discussions. We'll talk to you next time, and as always,
let's get lit.